Hello there, and welcome to the Fuze I Do podcast. I'm Alan Edwards, one of the celebrants with Fuze Ceremonies, and I'm joined by three of my friends and colleagues. Yes. So the first topic that we're going to discuss is something that it's one thing we get asked about as celebrants all the time, and it's symbolic gestures. And you say those words, and some people go. So I suppose the best opening gambit we would have is, in your own words, what is a symbolic gesture?
Well, I think for me it's about, to use the word symbol from the other word symbolic, is symbolising as the couple's love for each other by displaying an act. So an act could be an act of exchanging rings is probably the world's best known symbolic gesture. Forget about anything else you might do in a ceremony, it's probably the number one that everybody would recognise the world over. So I think it's about picking something that's appropriate to you as a couple, not false, just really suits you as a couple. And that's why each ceremony is so different, because not everyone will pick the same stuff, apart from the exchanging rings, probably 99.9% of the time.
I suppose for me, a symbolic gesture it's a kind of focal point, really, because it brings your guests' attention to the couple. If they don't know what's going on, they're a little bit like, oh, what's happening here? And it's just one of those things that sort of makes Humanist weddings stand out from, any other type of service, really. So we're going to go through some of the more kind of common ones, because there are so many different ones, as George alluded to, that you can have, and talk a little bit about how they work, our experience of them, why they might be right for your big day. And as I say, there are lots of different ideas that you can find on the Fuze Ceremonies website, fuzeceremonies.co.uk. So again, similar to the candle lighting, you're talking about sort of two becoming one. And this is something you might do kind of near the start of the ceremony. So the couple would choose two you could have anything really, couldn't you? You could have various designs, colours, and then they sort of join together, George, in a similar kind of way.
Yeah, well, it's about blending the gesture. Dates back hundreds of years, back to years when it was almost at the beginning a salt blending ceremony. It was almost like a covenant between doing a deal with the docks, where two parties would shake on it with salt, except bringing that kind of covenant of trust together. But it kind of morphed over time into sand blending, and sand being so small, the particles are absolutely tiny, as you know. Particularly you use different coloured sands to represent the couple or their children or the blended families coming together. There could be multiple amounts of kind of sand being blended. But my favourite line on that one is you could spend a lifetime trying to unpick the colours of sand, and it's absolutely impossible, of course, to do it. And that really, usually when I explain that to couples, they really love that sentiment of that.
Now, a wedding band warming, where the best man, who's already got a huge degree of responsibility on a wedding day, is entrusted to pass the rings, maybe tied together with a ribbon, to the front row. And they go around all the guests, and this gives everybody the chance to sort of, warm the rings ahead of them being presented to the couple.
I think it's a nice gesture. I actually quite encourage it, because I always tell the story about being two pieces of cold gold, and they're going to be passed round. And as you get them, hold them in your hands, warm them up, and think nice thoughts. Pass them on, but don't worry, they'll be back in jig time.
Yeah. So if the handfast is the most popular, the second most popular is perhaps the drinking from the quaich, which may traditionally be the first act that you have once you become married at your ceremony. Now, a quaich, for anyone who's not aware, it means a loving cup, and it's almost like a bowl. It's got two handles. It can have various different designs on it, very shiny. You can have big ones, you can have small ones. And the tradition was to fill that with whiskey. But we've seen in more recent years in ceremonies that we've conducted that there are many different variations on what can go inside that quaich, George.
I think next to the whiskey, which is popular, whiskies can be used, and there's often significance with whiskies in the family. It could be a gifted bottle to someone, or maybe a parent's been holding on to it for this day and time for many years. it can be really useful. But I'd say aside of whiskey, I think the most common drink has been gin and tonic, actually.
Really?
For me, yeah, it's been gin and tonic. And maybe it's because it's clear, maybe it's because it's a really neutral drink that the couple could agree on, perhaps. But it really is, it's about just making it their moment, really, of sharing.
If you're going to take anything that's rich in colour, maybe have a bib handy.
I've got a very interesting story, and it was a wedding in the Borders, and the bride brought the quaich, and this quaich had been presented to her when she was captain of the Scottish women's rugby team, and the rest of the squad presented it to her at the World Cup, which at that point was played in Barcelona. And the groom, because she had provided the quaich, the groom made bottles of sloe gin, and that's what they drank from their quaich, his homemade sloe gin.
But again, that's the message that we've got, is that you do not have to do anything a certain way. If you quite like the idea behind something, but you go, well, we don't like whiskey, or we're not big drinkers, or something like that, or we want to involve other family members, there are ways of doing that, and we as celebrants can sort of guide you to help make that work.
You mentioned that his name is the Living Cup, so the gesture is also about the cup represents the cup of life, and sharing your first drink directly, usually after the signing of the marriage schedule.
So this is an old African-American tradition where you would jump over the broom on your wedding day, and the broom sort of symbolises the sweeping away of the past, and the fact that the happy couple are now starting a new life together. That you've had this at a ceremony.
Yes, for the first time ever, it happened this year, and it was lovely. I didn't really know what to expect, but we coordinated it so that it was at the very end of the ceremony. And as soon as they jumped over the broom, the photographer and videographer were at the far end of the aisle, and as soon as they jumped over, I had already read my words, and the piper started to play, and they jumped over the broom and walked up the aisle hand in hand, jumped over the broom hand in hand as well. And it was just a lovely end to the ceremony. It was so nice, but they wanted to do it, and they made the broom, and it was floral, and it was like, it wasn't just like sticks or whatever at the end of a piece of wood, but they decorated it, and it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
As you say, George, a mythology or a history, or there is some kind of attachment to. So
I think all the gestures can be linked or dated to lots of different cultures around the world, religions around the world. So it's not just strictly something that's been made up for humanist ceremonies. They all have a symbolism of kind of unity, trust, love, companionship, everything really kind of what you're really trying to create in a strong relationship in marriage. Well, I think it has to be true to their relationship is the number one thing for me. I always say to couples, you don't want your guests, close family, sitting there thinking, who is that up there? That doesn't even feel like them. It really has to be true to their relationship, would be my top advice to people.
To admit, I would say the same as George. They've got to have a feeling for it. There's no point in doing a hand fasting just because I was at a wedding 4 weeks ago and I seen it and I liked it, So have something that's really, that means something to you. And if you don't have a symbolic gesture in your wedding, it doesn't mean that your wedding ceremony is going to be any worse or any better than anybody else's. They're just there to enhance it, or maybe include part of the family. But they're just to make it a better ceremony, if you like. It's got to be true to you. You're right, George.
Yeah, I think their ceremony, whatever's included, has to be all about the couple, and they choose if they want to have symbolic gestures or not. They may choose to go down another route and put more emphasis on something else other than symbolic gestures. But I always say that the biggest compliment anyone has ever paid me was after a wedding ceremony, and it was someone I knew who was a guest, and he came up to me afterwards and said, that wedding was just them. And that's what I'm aiming for with every couple. I want it to be what people would have expected of them.
And that's, as I say, I got married in August, and that's what people said to my wife and I, is that our ceremony was just us. So that's the best advice we could give you. Make your ceremony just you. when it comes to symbolic gestures. Another thing we should mention is, obviously we've gone through quite a long list of them here. You don't want to include too many, or you could be there all day. So think of the ones that mean the most to you, and choose, one or two.
Just another little thing that I do if a couple are coming from abroad, or one of them is not British, then I'll say, do you have any traditions in your country that you would like to bring to your wedding ceremony? Because it's that makes it more personal.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a Scottish ceremony. If someone's coming from, wherever.
Well, I've got a friend who his wife is Indian, and they actually had 2 weddings. And the first one, he was in the traditional Indian headdress, and it recognised the traditions of his wife's background. And then a few weeks down the line, they had the Scottish wedding with the kilts and the handfast, and it was a lovely way of representing both of them in their journeys up until that point. So again, it's just about the individuality that Humanist weddings can give you there, really. Well, guys, thank you very much for that little chat through symbolic gestures. If you're planning a big day, we hope that this has been helpful, and you can go to fuzeceremonies.co.uk and find out much more. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fuze I Do podcast. And if you subscribe, you'll be able to get the latest episodes downloaded to your device, wherever you normally get your podcasts from. George, and Evelyn, thank you very much.